Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Joining us now to talk more about this, we have member of Patriots of Act 746, Mr. Rick Bernard is with us. Rick, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, you've been a listener of the program because I see on our Facebook Live feed a whole lot. So it's actually great to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I picked up the Facebook Live one day from Kenny Wallace, and there was a lot of days where it was just me and Kenny listening. But
not anymore, right? Am I right?
No, not anymore. It's been over a year ago because it was a while ago that it showed up in my feed one day that I'd shared it. So I've enjoyed the lesson from Kenny. I like him a lot, and
yeah,
sure been enjoying your show.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate you listening. So tell me about Patriots of Act 746. How did you get involved? Because you're an admin on the page. Okay, so I mean you're pretty far up on the totem pole.
Yeah, I've been an admin for quite a while. I've been with it almost since the inception because I remember I had a class for CHL coming up in August, and me and Gary were chatting one day in July, and this is back before the law took effect, and he's like, "You bonehead, you don't have to have it." And I said, "I know, Gary." I said, "But because of reciprocity, or excuse me, whatever that
reciprocity, yeah.
Yes, reciprocity. I said, we traveled to Florida to see my wife's grandma and stepfather and aunt, and to Mexico to see her father. And I said, I'm tired of being a thug with my 9mm and my conceal holster, and I'm going to do it, So I've been there for a long time. There was just a couple hundred of us there, but we've grown a long ways from back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are over 11,000 people in that page. You guys have had marches, right? I mean, y'all have carried and, to make sure people know that what their rights are and everything else. And, I mean, it's incredible how Act 746 was passed, back in 2013. It was a secret success. Governor Mike Beebe signed it and didn't even know what he was signing, which should certainly let you know about the whole process, how easy it is for this is a rare case where a bill gives the people more freedom and people didn't understand what they were voting or signing. And a lot of times that can happen and people have less freedom. So we certainly lucked out on that one.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's a shame for a lawyer and a former attorney general to go ahead and not know what he's signing on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had that first year. We had we constantly marches all over the state. First one was in Fort Smith, and we had many others up in the northwest corner of the state, and down Conway and Little Rock, and up in Mountain Home and Harrison. And it took time to start to get people on board, but it's been a great grassroots movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really has, and the next step would be to get somebody like Governor Asa Hutchinson to actually acknowledge that constitutional carry is a thing. I mean, he won't do that, and according to Jan Morgan and others, that meeting, he doesn't want to do that because that would hurt the Arkansas State Police's budget, with the fees that go to a concealed carry handgun license. So it would be nice, right? I mean, it'd be nice if elected officials would just acknowledge what the law actually says, the reality.
That would be very nice. But the state police, along with their revenue stream, has long been fighting against it. We did an FOI back in 2015, I believe, June of 2015, and got 189 pages out of Mr. Sadler. And we've got emails from Mr. Downs, who is their attorney, telling the troopers how to negate Act 746 and consider if they've got one in the chamber, then that is unlawful intent, and to confiscate their license and things like that. And when we challenged them on that and brought it out, and then they changed their tune because that had gone out to all of the troopers. I had talked to my local
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine. We're so glad that you're with us and contributing to that. Just by listening, you're contributing to building the liberty machine. The phone number, call us or text us, 870-275-9799, or sound off on Facebook Live, facebook.com/Paul Talk Show. I hope everybody had a good weekend, and Merry Christmas to you. Joining us now, welcome to the program. We have the senator from District 5 here in Arkansas, State Senator Brian King is back with us. Brian, good to have you, sir.
Hey, good to be on, Paul.
Let's talk about the news. Over the weekend, I guess it broke. Michael Wickline with the headline, State Senator Won't Seek Re-Election. Tell us about that, Brian. Why did you decide not to run again? Because you are a great conservative with a great passion for transparency. So what led up, what contributed to the decision of not running for re-election?
Yeah, most of it is, with the farm and everything. I'm not, 3.5 hours from Little Rock, and a lot of things have changed in the last 12 years about what's going on here, and so some family reasons, and just that's one thing that's a primary focus, for me, and so that's kind of it, and it's, if you look at it from the Little Rock perspective, I mean, I think some other people kind of expanded on some of the frustrations you see down there, since Republicans have taken control, if you want to call it that, in so-called Republicans. I mean, crimes, we've talked about this, crime's horrible. It's gotten worse. There's all-time record spending. Mm-hmm. There's more people on Medicaid. And, they go out there and continue to mislead people. And just, it's just very frustrating in the legislature to sit there and no matter what facts come out, no matter what comes out, they just continue to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing in D.C. It's the same frustration up there. How many years did they campaign against Obamacare? And you know what? When they had the chance, no, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But when they need to get elected, they say this stuff. And that just gets into the last thing that just recently happened.
Well, and I want to get to that in a minute, but, you said 12 years. So I just want to say, first of all, I mean, that's long enough. I wanted you. I mean, I wanted you to run for re-election because I know how you see things, and but at the same time, I mean, you know, what a sacrifice to go down there the way you have, and serve, and you know, does anybody really want to say, well, you know, you've given 10, 12 years, you know, over a decade of your life, and you need to give more. I mean, you know, I wish we had folks who, you know, were like you that would step up and run, and give a little time.
Well, we
themselves.
have, and we've elected them, and unfortunately, Paul, they go down there and do the opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've been a part of. When I came in, there were 75 Democrats in the House, 25 Republicans, and so we started working on some things that tried to change it and stuff. And you know, what's going to happen is there's going to have to be a change in the leadership down there, and this misleading, deceiving governor has got to go. There's some people that once they get to, he's deceived now, they give him a chance, and they're like, well, Brian, you know, I'm like, I know the Hutchisons. I know how their game they play. You know, they all, you know, once they get into office, and then once they leave office, guess what? They're going and getting a check and being a lobbyist or something. They are they typify what's wrong with our public service.
So
it's like this public is there to serve them.
Yeah.
And like I said, once they leave office, they're going to become a lobbyist, or they're going to do something to get a check. You know, if not while they're in office, possibly.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is, you know, when they come in, it's like, oh, well, give Asa a chance, give everything a chance. Well, you do, and then, you know, we're going to have SB 96 that's going to end Medicaid expansion. Remember that?
Yep.
Didn't happen. It took Medicaid expansion to steroids.
Yep. Gave it new life.
And so, and that's, you know, that's, like I said, that's frustrating down there. And then you see the things that, just like I've been speaking out over the years about some of the things that's going on. What the heck's going on here? You know, is there something going on? And it comes out Michael Lamoureux's getting a check, Gilbert Baker, Jake Files, and then still no action down there of trying to correct anything. And then
can I ask one?
You know, and I'm not so sure Asa Hutchinson doesn't need to have questions about possible pay-to-play stuff.
Can I ask you a question? We're talking with Senator Brian King. One more question about you know, the process and your service, your time down there. So when you start out, you're a House member, and the Republicans are a minority. They're an up-and-coming party. They're trying to wrestle legislative control away from the Democrats. And, you know, there was probably a lot more unity than there is now, or at least, you know, we have common goals. These are our common goals. And now that the Republican Party is in power, it doesn't seem like we have those common goals of limiting government. And so, you know, is that what you signed up for? Obviously, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's about doing what you say to tell people back home when you get elected. Okay, how many Arkansas legislators campaigned to end Medicaid expansion in Arkansas, and then turn down there and go down there and do the opposite? And once they get caught up in it, well, and so that's what happens. But I've been around in politics enough. In 2006, when the Republicans got thrown out of Congress, you know what they did? Their base left them. They said, you know what? We got you elected, and they're doing the same thing. I mean, Bob Ballinger's out there. He was on Ellswick, and I'll be on Ellswick tomorrow, and I'll address a little bit of that, where he says, oh, just quit criticizing us. Just, you know, let's just keep, you know, just don't be criticizing us. Let's have unity. Let's have this. You know, this is about saying, no, you were supposed to do what you said you were going to do, and they haven't done it.
Yep.
And they do the opposite of it. And eventually, guess what? You get thrown back out of power. And what happened is, this next midterm election, you know, outside of this tax cut deal up there, that you're going to see things have in D.C., despite what Trump's tried to do, is continue to stay the same. Asa Hutchinson's even worse in that, you know, if you look at the bills on the crime issue, that him and Jeremy Hutchison, who's the biggest failure ever as Senate Judiciary Chairman. I mean, he was supposed to be the go-to guy to address our prison population and crime and everything like that. Well, guess what? It's got worse. But he's still in there. And Asa Hutchinson still comes out and says, oh, he's got this or that. And he seems to be more shoving things off on federal law enforcement instead of the state. But they're doing some things. But the reality is, what are you doing to our law enforcement when you sit there and done Medicaid expansion and everything else and all this, and spent billions more in Medicaid, and you've ignored our crime situation to the point that it's literally, Paul, this is just it. We got to take millions of dollars to do that. But we're off on another deal. But I kind of want to talk about this last.
Yeah, I do too. But what you're saying is right up. I mean,
it's right up this same alley of now.
The everything the stuff that a vast majority of us agree this is the government's responsibility to keep criminals behind bars and carry out their full sentences. We're giving up on that. And because we're spending on other priorities. So let's talk about that. The headline: the state cut revenue forecast by $22.1 million. Governor Hutchinson says, though, that we're not going to cut the state's projected budget, even though we're having to, cut the revenue forecast.
Yeah.
That seems weird. I want to talk about specifically something he said about we're going, quote, as an additional conservative tool to manage the budget, we will present to the General Assembly a fiscal 2019 budget that will reduce spending. This will provide sufficient cushion in the event there is an unanticipated economic news that changes the revenue picture next year, end quote. Then the paper goes on to point out that he gives no specifics about what the conservative tool would be. What do you make of this?
Well, first off, Governor Hutchinson, once again, misleading and deceiving people. This is the same guy, the all-time record spendingest governor in Arkansas history, all-time record spendingest governor in Medicaid. Okay, this is the same guy when he was not going to make projections and did a cut that said, hang on a minute, I've got too much communication going on here.
That's all right.
But this is the same guy that said, I don't have a spending problem. Why does he need a conservative tool for a guy that doesn't have a spending problem? I don't know that he needs to reduce spending. Why does he need another tool? But he was the one that said, it's just the taxpayers didn't send me enough money. Mm-hmm. Okay? But what Governor Hutchinson's really saying is he doesn't need a conservative tool. He needs conservative fools. He needs to fool the people again. He has all the tools are available for this. You have a Category A, a Category B. You do this, you fund A. Then if you have the money, then you fund B. Then you have these others. And so the other tool he has, which he totally ignores or, schemed around, was the 75 vote threshold on appropriation bills.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Him and Bart Hester and Jim Hendren and them, if do you respect the Constitution or you don't? Okay? And you can't say you respect the Constitution when all you do is come up with some lawyer legal scheme to get around it, and they did.
Yep, that's exactly right. So you're saying, he already has a tool to reduce spending, and it's called the Arkansas Constitution, and he did
and your own voting and your own budget mechanisms. There is all kinds of tools that it's already there. He doesn't need – what he needs is conservative fools that he can continue to fool people because, see, our budget years are on July 1st to June, end of June the next year. Okay, so he goes into an election year, and I saw Mike Beebe do the same thing. He goes into election year, and he goes in this budget session, and he's going to implement this conservative tool for the next time. Well, he's only got about 4 months or 5 months until the election. And then after that, he's got another 4 years. So this is just another gimmick that he's going to use for the next budget session. The problem is he keeps spending too much. And where's most of the spending? Medicaid. And who's responsible for all the spending and the problem we're in? Asa Hutchinson and the leadership down there, and everybody else that just falls in line with them.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about that. And I will say this. I think his comments about trying, using the buzzword, we're going to put an additional conservative tool to try to reduce spending.
Yes,
he is. I think this is him saying, hey, listen, I know that the base out there has gotten word that I've increased spending $130 million, $140 million, and $170 million the 3 years I've been here. And I think people are now starting to associate me in the base with being a big spender. So I'm going to start trying, like you said, to use these buzzwords to try to, paint a picture that he is who he's not. And that's how he kind of got elected. I mean, if you go back and look at his campaign commercials, he said he opposed Obamacare. He said he supported the Second Amendment. You know, he said all these things, but we have legislative record now that suggest otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like the last measure that they say is going to take off so many people. And one year, him and Dismayne go out there, if you want to talk about reducing spending, and what they do that they don't attack me on is they keep saying, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? First thing you need to do is cap enrollment, period.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
First thing, and he opposed that,
Yep.
okay? If you got a bad program, it's growing out of control, all this stuff and everything like that, what's the first thing you need to do? You need to cap it. He opposed it, number one. Number two is you need to go to a less expensive form of Medicaid, and that is just the straight Medicaid, not this insurance scam that Jonathan Dismayne loves to give Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then they turn around and hire his best friend. I mean, that right there, rotten, stinks. And then Dismayne runs the next bill. The same guy that had every failure and everything wrong with the Medicaid deal, had personal friends get jobs, and then all of a sudden he runs the next Medicaid bill. You know what? If you go along with it, you're a fool. Period. And that's what I stood down there and asked Senator Dismayne. I said, well, 1 year here you said we take off people off the Medicaid, your Medicaid, more expensive insurance scam Medicaid expansion. We take people off, there's going to be a hole in the budget. How many times we heard that, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Hole in the budget.
Yep.
If we take people off. Well, next year, him and A. Sessions say, no, we're going to save money. Which is it? I mean, the press is not holding them accountable for it. It's all been out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So let me ask you this. We're about out of time. We're talking with Senator Brian King. He has announced that he's not running for re-election. There was a lot of anticipation among, folks that would talk to me at the Capitol, and they would say, listen, the FBI has been running around here for several years. There are, coming indictments, that sort of thing. Some people, I was one included, thought that it was going to kind of revolve around the December 4th trial date of, the corruption trial of John Woods. Of course, that has been now postponed. And so I'm just curious, have you heard anything? I mean, there are all these rumors about somebody's going to be indicted, and yet it never seems to happen. It's been going on for way too long, a couple of years now. What are your thoughts on that? And could a massive corruption, a massive revealing of corruption, could that maybe make you change your mind and consider running for re-election?
I don't know. Some of this stuff I'm not going to comment on. What I'm going to say is that you never know. Till the filing period happens. Charlotte Douglas is still out there, and she hadn't decided. If she runs against Ballinger, she'll clean his clock. Ballinger won't. Ballinger has preached one thing and done another. I could go into numerous examples about that. Not only, he has more holes than a screen door. So I'm not worried about him or that. But
and you failed. Yeah, so you didn't endorse him in the reports I read.
No,
and you said
absolutely
Charlotte
not.
Douglas.
He epitomizes. Yeah, if Charlotte Douglas, decides to run, then she'll be the next. And Ballard's on the ballot. Charlotte Douglas will be the next state senator. Anyway, so that's it. But you never know you never know what's going to happen, to the filing period, and we'll just see what happens. But there's going to have to be something to shake up this bunch. But number one is back to Asa Hutchinson and this leadership bunch. I'm just going to keep commenting on what's come out. Jake Files, $80,000. Jake Files, $80,000. Michael Lamreau, Gilbert Baker. Look at just as what's come out.
I know. It doesn't make it's strange how much we know that is just like, whoa. You're not supposed to get elected and make a ton of money, right? Like that's not.
Well, yeah, and we're talking about personal muscle, but like I said, public service is about serving the public. It's not about them serving you, and that's what you see in this whole. Typically, that's what keeps the politics. It's just like I said about the Hutchinson. The minute they get beat in an election, the fastest thing, faster than a speeding bullet, is they're going to be a lobbyist and get a check off somebody.
Brian King, I appreciate your service. Thank you so much for coming on the program, and I can't wait to do it again.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
All right, folks. Senator Brian King, everybody. It's a shame he's not running, but he leaves the window open a little bit if you listen to what he said. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Merry Christmas from the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Paul, and you found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Fayetteville council member John Latour. And specifically, a whole lot of stories hit the news right before Thanksgiving concerning the Fayetteville City Council and whether or not a former council member, for example, the headline here, former Fayetteville City Council member sued by former partner of, like in a, in a sexual way, long didn't live in the ward. So apparently we have somebody who was living in Chicago, but also is this? I mean, we're gonna talk to Councilman John Latour. He's going to set the record straight on this. stuff released right before Thanksgiving, and we missed it. We'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Trooper here, along with many mayors, sheriffs, and chiefs, and all of that. But after we got that, I went and talked to him. He said, "Yep, I got it." I said, "How's your position?" He said, "Same as it always was." I said, "Okay."
Mm-hmm.
But they've been trying to run it amok since the start. They don't like it.
So you're organizing an event. Let's speaking of Jan Morgan, on December the 5th, right, Marion County Fairgrounds.
Yes, sir.
There's going to be an event. Jan Morgan's going to be there for the folks in Marion County to come out and meet her, hear her speak, right?
Yes, sir. 5 p.m. next Tuesday. We're going to have Jan. I got to meet her personally a couple of years. In fact, the day that, our Attorney General put the opinion out on Act 746, I took my wife down with a class for her. But Jan's going to come on up, and you've been beating the drum pretty good about the Republican Party working against her, and they initially reached out to me to do members on their local committee that didn't want to.
Hang on, Rick. You broke up, I think, in the key part of your sentence there. You say, okay, I've been hammering the Republicans for being afraid of just ideas, and specifically Jan Morgan's, speaking. And so you're saying
right.
We lost you right when you said that initially the Republican Party reached out to you to do what?
Well, the party didn't want, the local committee didn't want to publicly invite Jan, but they reached out to me. I'm basically a conservative Christian libertarian, and I've run on the libertarian ticket, but I've held events for different candidates in the county before, and Bruce Emerson and some people from the committee had reached out and said, "Would you do this? We think you'd cross better lines." And we got a couple of fuddy-duddies, and we'll get a meeting with the committee, and we'll be there, and the county judge was all in, and that. Now this last 2 weeks here, the committee doesn't want to talk. They won't make an appointment for Jan to meet them. The county judge, when I run him down, is wavering instead of something like he said when I talked to him 3 weeks ago. "Yep, it's on my calendar. I'm all in. I'll be there." I'll try to see if I can be there, and I can't prove it, but it just seems to me like more outside forces coming in.
Absolutely.
Their voodoo.
It sounds to me like, just based on what you just said, Rick, that they reached out to you because they wanted to hear her. They wanted to hear Jan, but they didn't want to do it in an official capacity. Probably because they wanted to avoid getting called out, by the people, the governor and everybody else, but they still wanted to hear her. And it seems like that they are, they're just making sure everybody toes the line. I mean, the word has gone out. I know coming up this weekend, all right, folks. Happy Monday to everybody out there. Merry Christmas as well. I've been following this group of articles for about a week now. I've had it, and we haven't talked about it yet. But something happened right before Thanksgiving that was just odd. There was a story that broke about the former Fayetteville City Council member was sued by a former partner. They lived together for 12 years, according to the Brandon Riddle story here. Lawyer Stephen Kay filed this suit October 31st in Washington County Circuit Court against his ex-partner of 12 years, Alan Long, who served as Fayetteville City Council representative for Ward 4. As the city's vice mayor, the lawsuit accuses Long of engaging in an apparent acceleration of financial diversion as part of an effort to relocate to Chicago under the guise of working for his employer. Since July of this year, Allen rarely returns to Fayetteville except when his position as the vice mayor or alderman requires it. Allen Long does not live in the ward he represents, and he did not reside in the ward he represents at the time he ran for re-election. This is all in the suit. So he steps down. This news was breaking, like right before Thanksgiving, November 22nd. Some of these stories coming out, most of them, November 22nd. And then the Fayetteville Council goes ahead and appoints a resident to fill the vacancy. City Council appointed a school teacher to fill the vacancy left by former member Alan Long. For those of you across the state, I'm giving you just kind of a crash course in what has happened, transpired here, because it's interesting. And then Kyle Smith knows his appointment. This is another story, follow-up story by Stacey Ryburn, December 3rd. Kyle Smith, the newly appointed councilman, knows his appointment to the city council doesn't look good because he rents a room to the guy he replaced. So really weird stuff going on. Joining us now, we have council member from Fayetteville, Mr. John Latour is with us. John, welcome to the Paul Harrell program. How are you?
Good afternoon, Paul Harrell. Glad to join you and your listeners and be glad to discuss what I know of these facts.
Yeah. I mean, did I get anything wrong there? What's going on?
Well, all I would add to it is most of these facts that you recited are alleged facts in the lawsuit by Stephen H.K. versus Alan Long. And you had the date right. It was filed October 31st, 2017 at 11:37 a.m. So this became public knowledge on that date, October 31st. Of course, it wasn't made public from the city until the Monday before Thanksgiving, which was November 20th, some 20 days later. And I think timing was taken into consideration by those in the powers that be in the city of Fayetteville.
Oh,
they wanted it done that way so most people would be out of town during Thanksgiving week or not paying attention. You've got guests coming in, you're cooking the turkey, blah, blah, blah. All sorts of things going on during that busy week, and they won't be paying attention very closely to political things that are happening.
Mm-hmm. So there's also a kind of a bigger story here. Well, more important to me, obviously, I think we found out that the old city councilman wasn't Alan Long. He didn't actually live in the ward he was representing. But this was an appointed position, and yet he still had something like 3 years to finish out his term. Is that correct?
3 years and 1 month and a few days, so it's over 3 years. I could go along with an appointment if it was just 6 months remaining in an unexpired term or even up to a year. But 3 years will really put Kyle Smith in a position of incumbency when he seeks re-election in 3 years and a month from now. And that would give him an unfair advantage, I think.
So why not do an election? Why not do a special election or in the next general election? Why not set a And I know you voted when it came time to appoint. The council members voted, and you voted against this decision.
That's correct. Justin Tennant and I were the two no votes on the appointment process, and everyone else, along with the mayor, voted to appoint Kyle Smith. Kyle led the way in a group called For Fayetteville, which was for extending special rights to the homosexual community in Fayetteville. I have nothing against anyone in Fayetteville. I love everybody. I like all peoples, no matter what your political stripe, no matter what any kind of other stripe you have. I believe we should all love our fellow man. It's just I don't want to see one group privileged over at the expense of other groups. I think you get into shaky ground constitutionally when you do that.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the way I understand it in Fayetteville, if you run for this ward, only those people in the ward can vote for you. And so if that's the case, then you have all these other council members who are from different wards making the decision for Ward 4 in this case in Fayetteville for the next 3 years.
Exactly. All the rest of us on city council went through campaigns. We incurred expenses. We put in long hours going door to door, getting our vote out. And Mr. Smith came in with just 5 votes, and all from people who live in other wards. So it seems unfair to me, but I'm the minority on city council, so I can verbalize my opposition, but I cannot carry a vote in that line.
Yeah, and that I remember that Fayetteville ordinance. I mean, it seems like they wanted. I mean, it seems like you had maybe somebody who's on the left occupying that seat. They wanted to make sure somebody on the left occupies that seat again. And you talk about that Fayetteville First ordinance. I mean, that was something that was, not about equal protection under the law like they claimed. It actually was very anti, First Amendment conscience protection, religious liberty protections. I mean, right? I mean, did you fight that ordinance when it was all the rage? I mean, it was making headlines all across the state.
Well, I was the opposition to that ordinance.
Yeah.
And there's a YouTube video with me explaining my position. If I'm a member of the LGBTQ community and I choose to live out what I believe, under that ordinance, I'm protected. If I'm a member of the community that believes in traditional marriage and I choose to live out what I believe, under that ordinance, I'm subject to prosecution. So I didn't think it was really a fair ordinance. It favored one group at the expense of another group. As long as that is the case, I could not support it.
Yeah.
We could remedy some of that by making the exception to prosecution for people who held a sincere, good faith belief in a certain form of morality.
Yeah. But then you're going to have some judge that makes the decision on what that definition is. I just think it's the first. I mean, religious freedom and conscience has been a protected group, since 1789 in this country. It's very clear. It's in the First Amendment, and when people try to go against the First Amendment, it's just I don't know, red flags go up everywhere. We're talking with John Latour. He's a Fayetteville Council member. Now, John, you sound like a limited government guy. Would I be describing you as that?
You are correct. I'm for limited government. As government grows, liberty recedes. I love liberty, and I will fight to protect liberty at every turn. That means I have to fight for limited government. I'm not an anarchist. I don't want no government. I want government, but I want it restrained and limited.
So, you got elected to city council. I mean, are you maybe one of the few or the only conservatives on the council? I mean, Fayetteville's a pretty progressive town, as they would call themselves.
Yes, Fayetteville is very progressive, and I say that's a code word for liberalism.
Yes.
They believe that big government is the way to go. I believe that limited government is the way to go. We were in the middle of fighting against this so-called civil rights ordinance when my election came about in 2014. And I think that was a really hot-button issue for a lot of people in Ward 4, and it was a field of 6, and we were able to win that seat without a runoff election. Many people were surprised, including myself. But that's the way it worked, and here I am. And I swim in a sea of liberalism, but I will not give up my conservative roots. I like to describe myself as a statesman, not a politician. A politician sways in the wind, puts his finger up, his political finger, see which way the wind is blowing, so he knows which way to march. I describe myself as a statesman who lives and dies on his principles, much like Ronald Reagan did.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. Let me ask you about this tweet. Joe, can you throw this tweet up on the screen here? This was from the city of Fayetteville. Tell me if this is the description. Now, this is back to the meat and potatoes of this councilman, Long, and getting replaced by Councilman Smith now. It says, Councilmember Latour asked Mr. Smith if he knew that former Councilmember Alan Long used Mr. Smith's address as his own. Kyle Smith's reply was, yes. Mr. Smith asked the relevancy of the question. Councilmember Latour accused Mr. Smith of conspiracy with former Alderman Long. Can you expand on that? Is that accurate? I mean, and was there really knowledge? I mean, that's kind of sound like election fraud there.
Well, it sounds like election fraud to me too, and could be. Now, I'm surmising some things. I'm assuming some things. We would have to put Mr. Smith and Mr. Long on a witness stand to get them under oath to really know what's going on here. But the plaintiff in the lawsuit against Mr. Long, Mr. K, might also shed some light as to where Mr. Long was actually living at the time. In this lawsuit, Mr. K alleges that Mr. Long had moved to Chicago sometime in July of this year. In which case, if when I asked the question of Mr. Smith, were you aware that Mr. Long was using your address as his official Ward 4 address? Mr. Smith would be aware then that Mr. Long was not actually living there, and if he consented to help Mr. Long deceive Ward 4, then any kind, conspiracy, a legal conspiracy or a criminal conspiracy is defined as when two or more people agree to break a law. That's a simplistic definition, I agree, but it's basically the essence of what conspiracy is. So if the two of them agreed to, you let Allen use that address, and Mr. Smith knew that Mr. Allen was not living there, then that would, in my mind, be a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, it's
right.
very, and it's also strange that all of this comes out right before Thanksgiving. And like you said, they knew on October 30th that this was now public knowledge, but they wait and they do something about it right before the holidays. It's very strange.
I've learned in the political realm, Paul, that nothing happens by coincidence. Everything is planned and strategic. So when something comes out just before Thanksgiving, there's a reason for that coming out at that time.
Yeah, for sure. There really is. So I talked to you a little bit before you came on the program. We talked a little bit about some of the national issues, and just the issues that are facing the country. And so I got a question for you, because I like to ask this, especially of folks who are in any form of politics, at the smallest local level all the way up. When you have people who are campaigning one way, specifically, I know, in different cities, it can be more liberal, but let's just talk about generally Arkansans, issue by issue, are very conservative people, in my opinion. A limited government, less taxes, less regulation. When you have a bunch of Republicans, and the Republicans have taken control over Arkansas, much like they took control over the House in D.C., and then the Senate, and then the presidency, and they campaign on very popular ideas, and then it's like they come up with excuses to not do them, and in some cases do the opposite and grow the size of government. What are we the people supposed to do when that kind of stuff happens, and they try to mask what they're doing sometimes as conservative, when in reality it's the complete opposite of what they campaigned on? Do you have any suggestions?
Vote, baby, vote. Vote, baby, vote. We've got to get people out. We have Democrats masquerading as Republicans. I'm trying to avoid Republican-Democrat designations because they're deceptive. I would show it as actual conservative Republicans versus establishment Republicans and Democrats. In my mind, establishment Republicans and Democrats want basically the same thing. And a lot of times they couple that with having their cake and eating it too. What I mean by that is they can campaign on the conservative issues. They say, I'm pro-life, I'm pro this or I'm pro that, I'm pro small government, I'm pro big tax cut, blah, blah, blah. They get up there. Well, to illustrate on a national level, how many times did Republicans in the House and the Senate vote to repeal Obamacare? And they voted each time as long as they knew Obama was in the White House and he'd veto it.
Yep.
Now, when you finally have a president in Donald Trump who will sign the revocation of Obamacare, it can't pass the Senate. That shows their true colors. And we need to not be naive. I'm sick and tired of being treated like a patsy. Oh, nice little Republican John Latour, vote for us, get us in the office. We get him into office, and again, just like the last 20 years, nothing changes. It is time to drain the swamp, and let's start in the Republican Party. At least Democrats are honest. They tell us who they are. Republicans many of these establishment Republicans are masquerading themselves as Republicans.
Yeah.
They're not truly Republicans,
Yeah.
and they're tarnishing the Republican brand.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you just said. It's very, very well said. As a matter of fact, at the top of the hour, I want to talk about how we disagree with people in our own movement and why it becomes very contentious. Why it's hard to criticize. We're criticizing the establishment, and their reaction is one that they're combating the base of their party. And I want to expand on that because I've thought about it, and it's actually very simple. I thought about it, but that's why it's getting contentious here in Arkansas, at least, when I or let's say Conduit for Action or anybody else points out what the establishment in Arkansas is doing. They don't admit to it. They don't admit that what they're doing is the opposite of what they campaign on. Instead, they try to mask it by claiming it's something that it isn't, and that's where the contention is, because we can't roll over and just say, yeah, they're right. What they're doing is just what Ronald Reagan would do when it's growing government, and that's the problem that we're having right now. John Latour, it's been a pleasure to have you on the program, and I'd love to have you on again soon, and we can talk more.
Paul, anytime. Glad to share my views and what we need to do to save our state, and actually, I would expand that notion to actually. And I don't think this is being melodramatic. I don't think it's over-dramatizing. I think the very future of our republic hangs in the balance. We've got to rein in government. We've got to stop spending our children's future. We're incurring debt upon debt. We need to get out of that mode of operation, and let's start reining in the size of government. I tell people if I were president, there'd be a lot of unemployed bureaucrats in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I start with the Department of Education.
Yeah, that's exactly
that
right.
That should be in the states, not in Washington D.C.
No, I completely agree. John Latour.
I could take most of the federal agencies and go down the list, but we won't do that now.
All right. Well, hey, let's do that some other time. I would really enjoy that. John, I appreciate it. It's been nice to meet you.
Thanks, Paul.
All righty.
Sure thing.
Folks, we got to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group. The Liberty Machine rolls on. Back in a minute.
Merry Christmas from the Paul Harrell program and Conduit Media.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat-shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to Talk Radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising
Because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
All right, I don't know if you've heard the news. Donald Trump with at least acclaimed legislative victory with the tax cuts passing the Senate, and now they go into reconciliation. But this is huge too. The Supreme Court has just ruled and has allowed the full enforcement of the travel ban. Of course, this whole story started 10 months ago, when the courts decided to try to prevent Donald Trump from protecting the country. Of course, the Supreme Court has now, let's see, I've got actually a Donald Trump statement here. In response to the Supreme Court ruling that President Trump's travel ban, which restricts travel to the United States by people from Iran, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, and Chad without bona fide connections to the U.S., can take full effect while legal challenges proceed. Michael S. Glassner, executive director of the Donald Trump for President Inc., issued the following statement, quote, from June 16th, 2015 to this day, President Trump's immigration policies have always been about one thing, keeping Americans safe from people who seek to do us harm and attack our freedoms. As promised, the president directed his administration to conduct a thorough and appropriate review of immigration vetting procedures in place under the previous administration to ensure that terrorist attacks do not occur on American soil. Now that the Supreme Court has ordered the lifting of restrictions on this ban, minimum security standards for entry into the United States can be enforced. All Americans should take heart that President Trump is fully committed to making America safe again and will continue the fight to ensure their safety no matter what. Again, what I was glad when President Trump made the decision on the immigration. I'm glad the Supreme Court has upheld his authority to do so because, it's like if you just look at the contrast, he's if it's our guy, he's the president, he can do that. And if it's their guy, it's like, no, he can't, challenge him in court, even though we're talking about the same powers and, constitutional responsibility. But this was an argument on talk radio long before President Donald Trump made his decision. And the argument was very simple, okay? There's no reason for the TSA to put us through what we're going through if you're not going to at least screen people based on country of origin. Period. It never made any sense. And, let's pat down a 90-year-old woman's, waistband and, potentially under her skirt or whatever. Let's put, the thumb in between, my waistband is and feel up my legs and, touch my genitals. Let's do that. But we're not going to say, you know what, if you're from Yemen, I don't think you should come here. That is maddening. That always has been, okay, when you know about the terrorist hotbeds from Yemen. It's just basic, it's common sense. If you want to protect a country, it's common sense. And this kind of stuff, when you take arguments from talk radio for years and you see solutions being attempted based on the logic is actually really encouraging to me. Back in a minute.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Revenue stream has long been fighting against it. We did an FOI back in 2015, I believe, June of 2015, and got 189 pages out of Mr. Sadler. And we've got emails from Mr. Downs, who is their attorney, telling the troopers how to negate Act 746 and consider if they've got one in the chamber, then that is unlawful intent, and to confiscate their license and things like that. And when we challenged them on that and brought it out, and then they changed their tune because that had gone out to all of the troopers. I had talked to my local trooper here, along with many mayors and sheriffs and chiefs and all of that. But after we got that, I went and talked to him. And he said, "Yep, I got it." I said, "How's your position?" He said, "Same as it always was." I said, "Okay."
Mm-hmm.
But they've been trying to run it amok since the start. They don't like it.
So you're organizing an event. Let's speaking of Jan Morgan, on December the 5th, right, Marion County Fairgrounds.
Yes, sir.
There's going to be an event. Jan Morgan's going to be there for the folks in Marion County to come out and meet her, hear her speak, right?
Yes, sir. 5 p.m. next Tuesday. We're going to have Jan. I got to meet her personally a couple of years. In fact, the day that, our Attorney General put the opinion out on Act 746, I took my wife down with a class for her. But Jan's going to come on up, and you've been beating the drum pretty good about the Republican Party working against her, and they initially reached out to me to do members on the local committee that didn't want to.
Hang on, Rick. You broke up, I think, in the key part of your sentence there. You say, okay, I've been hammering the Republicans for being afraid of just ideas, and specifically Jan Morgan's speaking. And so you're saying
right.
We lost you right when you said that initially the Republican Party reached out to you to do what?
Well, the party didn't want, the local committee didn't want to publicly invite Jan, but they reached out to me. I'm basically a conservative Christian libertarian, and I've run on the libertarian ticket, but I've held events for different candidates in the county before, and Bruce Emerson and some people from the committee had reached out and said, "Would you do this? We think you'd cross better lines." And we got a couple of fuddy-duddies, and we'll get a meeting with the committee, and we'll be there, and the county judge was all in, and that. Now this last 2 weeks here, the committee doesn't want to talk. They won't make an appointment for Jan to meet them. The county judge, when I run him down, is wavering instead of something like he said when I talked to him 3 weeks ago. "Yep, it's on my calendar. I'm all in. I'll be there." I'll try to see if I can be there, and I can't prove it, but it just seems to me like more outside forces coming in.
Absolutely.
Their voodoo.
It sounds to me like I mean, just based on what you just said, Rick, that, you know, they reached out to you because they wanted to hear her. They wanted to hear Jan, but they didn't want to do it in an official capacity, probably because they wanted to avoid getting called out, you know, by the people, you know, the governor and everybody else, but they still wanted to hear her, and it seems like that they are. I mean, you know, they're just making sure everybody toes the line. I mean, the word has gone out. I know. Coming up this weekend, the state party has a meeting down in Little Rock, so I know that's going on, and I understand that there's going to be an attempt to get county committee officials, you know, who are there to just, you know, start towing that line, and I know Asa is probably going to personally talk to them and say, hey, look, you know, I'm the head of the party here, and I'm the governor, and you guys are not going to try to, you know, abandon me in support of Jan Morgan, and there's a lot of intimidation going on right now. In spite of that, though, I think you and me both, Rick, I'd go on record and predict that this Marion County event on December 5th is going to be huge.
I sure hope it is, Paul. I'm going to spend
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, here we go. Welcome to the program. This is hour number 2. My name is Paul. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. We want you to be a part of it. Call us, text us, sound off on the program, 870-275-9799. All right, so we have a few things to go over, and I'm going to start with the whiteboard today, okay? We haven't been over the whiteboard today. You guys have probably seen it. All right, here we go. Take a listen. Or, I'm sorry, take a look. Those of you watching at paulharrell.com or those of you watching over on Facebook. It says, basically, it's the word less on top, the word meaning in the middle, and the word full on the bottom. So, I mean, if you read from top to bottom, it just says less meaningful. That's not actually what I'm going for here, okay? Basically, I'm really trying to communicate two words, meaningless and meaningful. Meaningless or meaningful. I think there is a lot of evidence out there that the words of most politicians are meaningless, but the actions of those politicians are meaningful. So case in point, Joe, can you pull up the article? Governor Asa Hutchinson on the spending right there. State cuts revenue forecast by $22.1 million, but we're not going to change the budget at all. And in this article, go ahead and put it up there. Governor Asa Hutchinson says that he's trying his best. In this article, Governor Asa Hutchinson says that he wants to come up with this concept of a spending limit or some sort of tool. We don't know what it is. He calls it a conservative tool. Can you find the part where he calls it a conservative tool? He calls it a conservative tool that is going to cut spending here in Arkansas. Now, at this point, those are words, and those words are meaningless. Meaningless, right? But Governor Hutchinson's actions, which would be he's increased spending $133 million his first year, $140 million his second, $170. This article actually says another $130. But what's $30 million between friends? Those actions have been meaningful to us because that's why they're going after so much revenue. So Governor Hutchinson's spending, the record increases in spending, are meaningful. All right, his words are meaningless. Okay. This is a guy who called the private option phrase politically toxic, and then he just thought he could rename it. So saying that was meaningless, but actually renewing and re-implementing Obamacare is meaningful. It has a lot more meaning because it's affecting people in a negative way, right? Or if you're getting free stuff, I guess you would argue it's affecting you in a positive way. But you see what I'm saying? Words do have meaning. Unfortunately, they don't really mean much. That's what our whiteboard is about this week, is less meaningful, meaning less meaningful. Now, in that context, the meaningless language that you are hearing from the governor and others is something that I call carefully crafted language. Well, actually, it's not me. Joe, give me audio. It's actually Governor Asa Hutchinson himself when he said this. Carefully crafted language. You remember it? Hang on a second. It will commence momentarily. Yeah. Do you have it? Okay. Well, yeah, it's not working. Anyway, it was Asa Hutchinson that said, oh, hang on. Maybe it's that. Yeah, here it is. Governor Hutchinson.
I want to refer everybody back to my remarks because that's the key language that was carefully crafted.
Right. All right. So, that's what he said. He's the one that's creating this essential propaganda, carefully crafting to make sure, he's riding this fence or that fence and that sort of thing. And I feel like that's what you have when he, in the paper, when it's talking about budget, he knows he's being painted as a big spender, right? He knows he's being painted as a big spender. As an additional conservative tool to managing the budget, we will present to the General Assembly a fiscal 2019 budget that will reduce spending. This will provide a sufficient cushion in the event there is an unanticipated economic news that changes the revenue. So he's saying, hey, we're gonna figure out a way to cut spending here. Well, how come he hasn't already done it yet? How come he hasn't already done it? I mean, I think it's, in a way, him trying to paint himself as, he's not a spender is going completely against the narrative that I have presented on this program, this one in particular. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, and so Governor Hutchinson he's sitting here saying, no, I'm a conservative, and we're gonna. He actually said, it's right here. This will provide sufficient cushion. We will present to the General Assembly that will reduce spending. Reduce spending. It's crazy. It's just interesting to me how, the base knows what's really going on. True conservatives, limited government people know what's going on. And what's the governor doing? He's reacting to it. He's reacting. He's trying to counter the truth. Okay? Like the graphic we have. We even made that graphic, or we had it made, of Asa Hutchinson's face, in cartoon face, and then him, it's saying Asa underneath it with a dollar sign. You don't think he saw that? You don't think Asa Hutchinson people saw that and said, uh-oh. Yeah, that's a very effective way to paint him. Yeah, hey, how's it going? Hey, here we go. Now I'm Asa. Look at me. Right? You see it up there on the screen? You can take it down now. My point is, he's now going out there saying the opposite of what that image conveys, the opposite of what that audio you just heard conveys. We did a Wednesday Weekly on it. It was funny, right? So just think about that for a second. In a way, it's a small victory that he's going around with these carefully crafted language trying to say, no, I'm going to get spending under control. Well, why haven't you gotten spending under control? We had Brian King on the program last hour. He did announce this weekend he's not seeking re-election, but Brian King quick to call out Governor Asa Hutchinson with a few of these tweets. Let's see some of them. This first one is good. It was a Michael Wickline story, and Brian King tweets at Michael Wickline, says, another promise of conservative tools. Seriously, Asa Hutchinson, there are already tools to limiting spending. First, stop spending so much. For 2 years, you've overspent. More deception to get through the next election. So this is a perfect way to decode carefully crafted language, okay? Governor Hutchinson said he's going to introduce a tool. We don't know what that is. He didn't go into specifics, but he's going to introduce a tool to reduce spending in Arkansas, because he knows that you have discovered that he has overspent. And Brian King says, hang on a second. He's essentially saying, hey, this is carefully crafted language, right? So you need to know how to recognize carefully crafted language, and I'm going to try to continue to help you to do it by just pointing you to other people that can recognize it. Senator Brian King can recognize deception when he sees it. Okay, go to the next tweet. Brian King. What about the conservative, quote, tool in the Arkansas Constitution with a 75% on appropriation bills? Ever heard of that at Asa Hutchinson? Well, yeah, till you worked a scheme to line item veto to get around the Constitution. This is a point that is irrefutable in, if you really wanted to control spending, Asa Hutchinson would have led us out of Obamacare instead of solidifying Obama's signature domestic achievement and keeping it on life support here in Arkansas. He would have led us out of this misery, of this bad government, but he chose not to. If he really cared about spending, he would have been okay that the legislature had the votes to kill it by defunding it. And instead, they convinced all the Democrats to support a bill that defunded Obamacare in Arkansas with the understanding and the faith in a Republican, quote, end quote, governor, Asa Hutchinson, that he would line item veto the part that actually defunded Obamacare. Now think about that scheme. Nobody really talks about it except us. That scheme exposes Asa as being a Democrat as far as I'm concerned, and exposes everybody that went along with it as being a Democrat as far as I'm concerned. Because you guys participated in the scheme. You think the Democrats are just, like, you think the Democrats are just, like, sitting around being like, what? Like, of course, in order for them to vote for something to end something they agree with, they had to trust a Republican governor just to get around the Republican extremists. You mean the actual Republicans? The ones who are willing to stand up to the pressure. You mean those guys? Ah, okay. I see. Conservative tool. What about this next Brian King tweet? I'm going to miss him in the Senate, by the way. More deception from Asa Hutchinson on the budget. Desegregation payments. Okay, so one of the things in this article that Asa Hutchinson says is our budget's going to be fine because desegregation payments are going to end, meaning we're no longer going to have to make those payments at the state of Arkansas, so we'll get to keep that money and spend it somewhere else, I'm sure. So that's what Brian is referring to here. More deception on Asa Hutchinson on the budget. Desegregation payments end. That's true, but even without taking this in consideration, the growth is still above 3%. Sorry, Gov, you can fool many in legislature, but not me. Hashtag I know BS when I see it is what he wrote. This, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to Brian King, he has decoded for everyone to see what carefully crafted language is. And that brings me to my next point. It's, carefully crafted language is a means of deception. And people, there have been people that have asked, Conduit for Action went to the Benton County Republican Committee, 4 weeks ago now? And you had Senator Bart Hester, and you had him criticize. He said that the organization has no integrity. He defended Senator Jim Hendren, verily, pointed to the sky when he mentioned his name, but Senator Jim Hendren like he's some sort of deity or something. It was weird. He attacked Conduit for Action and said that the organization has no integrity, which is not true. And I think those of you that read that website, for example, know that that's not true. it was a great presentation, but one of the things that kept being asked while they were just going over the bills that were good last session and the bills that were not good last session, one of the things that was brought up was, inside the Republican Party, how do we have the disagreements? How do you have the disagreements when you have a legitimate problem with the policies that are being pursued and implemented, right? And I've been thinking a whole lot about that. Why is it so hard to disagree? I mean, now you see it with the establishment, like Mitch McConnell. You saw it with, Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi to some extent. But, Mitch McConnell, let's just stick with Republicans. Mitch McConnell, right? Paul Ryan. There is a protectionist mentality of you're not going to criticize, the establishment. The establishment's going to control things. We're not going to allow things to get too conservative or what they would call extreme and that sort of thing. You see the same thing in Arkansas with Asa, his family members, and the Republican Party of Arkansas. And so we need to talk about that really in a separate instance, is the similarities between the establishment in D.C. and here. But it really comes down to dishonesty. And the other side, the establishment is asking us to be okay and be quiet about dishonesty. And there's no other way around it. So when I was having a conversation with a legislator the other day, and they were talking about words that I use on this program, how things could be different, And when somebody lies or intentionally deceives, I pointed out, and I do provide the proof of it, but I also editorialize. I think this is dishonest or deception or intentional or a lie. Dare I say it, a lie, right? The problem is how the establishment is trying to take the limited government side of the aisle's position. You see, our position is limited government. Their position is, we're limited government. They're not being honest. They intentionally understand something, that if they admit that their policy is actually the opposite, that they're going to lose power. So they're asking us to be okay with their dishonesty. It's hard to have an honest disagreement because they are not being honest like the Democrats would be. The Democrats would say, yes, socialism's good. Yes, we want to throw all of our money together in one big pot and divide it up equally because that's fairness. Yes, the progressive income tax needs to be extremely high because you are a second-class citizen if you've done well for yourself. They believe that stuff. They'll tell you that stuff. They will say, Barack Obama, well, I don't care about the capital gains tax. They're rich, and for purposes of fairness, they need to be paying more. They will say that stuff. They will be honest about that stuff. We're battling people in our own party or our own movement who will not admit that they are moving the state towards the left. So, in essence, they're asking us to just be like, yeah, that is conservative. Right, way to go. You've got an R next to your name, and so you're expanding a welfare program, but you say that it's conservative, and so we're going to agree that it's conservative. And I say to that, you can just take a hike, man. I'm not going to shut up about that. And I don't know how I could live with myself if I just said, okay, yeah, that's great. You're fine. You're doing the conservative thing. You're trying to deceive people. You're trying to lie to people. And so if there are any middle-of-the-road Republicans who know the direction of this state is moving towards the left, but, you don't want it to be as contentious as it is, I don't see how it goes any other way. How do you do it when they're trying to convince an electorate that they are something they're not? It would be totally civil. It would be totally, we can agree to disagree, and it'd be totally civil if they'd say, yes, Obamacare in the long run is great for this state. But I don't know of hardly any of them that'll do that. I know we got to take a break, but you see what I'm saying? Less meaningful, meaning less words of we're conservative, but their actions are meaningful, and they're not conservative actions. They're growing the size of government. Back in a minute.
Merry Christmas from the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. Governments do not make ideals, but ideals make governments. This is both historically and logically true. Of course, the government can help to sustain ideals and create institutions through which they can better be observed, but the source of their very nature is in the people. The people have to bear their own responsibilities. There's no method by which that burden can be shifted to the government. It's not the enactment, but the observance of laws that created the character of a nation. President Calvin Coolidge.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triple-rpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triple-rpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triple-rpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Merry Christmas, Joe. We got about 2 minutes, and you know what I'm doing tonight? It's a Harrell family tradition. But tonight is December, the month of December. I'm starting the Fellowship of the Ring, and you're gonna watch it at your house in honor. All right, yeah, starting the Fellowship of the Ring extended cut tonight. It was funny is I've got other family members that are across the country, and we view it simultaneously. I know it sounds weird, but there's so many gospel ideas and concepts in the Lord of the Rings that really are fun. And because they always came out in December, and I watched all through high school and college, this is just a tradition that I do. So I'm starting that tonight. But more importantly, Star Wars is coming out in like 11 days, 10 days if you go to that midnight. Well, technically, is it a midnight showing on the 14th? Not okay. No. So, no, it is a midnight showing on the 14th, right? No. So you're going to have to wait till the 15th, which is going to be a Friday. Whatever. Okay, we can get to that later. But my point is, I'm pretty stoked about it. I'm pretty snoked about it, actually. Yes. No, it's good, and it's legitimate. It came to me just now, I hadn't planned it. I'm snoked about Star Wars. About Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And here's the thing. We will make a non-spoiler. I'll make a non-spoiler commitment. Number one, I'm not going to see it when it first comes out because I have to wait. You're going to see it immediately, so we're going to have to really be nice and not spoil this for our audience. Back in a moment, folks.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
In the next 2 days, down around the square and the courthouse, I've got a great big stack of flyers printed up, and I'm going door knocking the best I can, and we're sure going to try to put on a great event for Jan because not only are we Facebook friends, she's also a personal friend of mine. She's a great instructor and a great person, and I hope we can put on a real good event for her.
Yeah, and those of you who are watching on Facebook from that area, you know, it's going to be at the fairgrounds. What time on December the 5th?
5 p.m. at the county fairgrounds. It's actually in Summit, but for all the local folks, they know where it is.
Yeah.
They can. It's really easy to go ahead and find. So they can just
well, and you know, it could
look me up. I've got flyer up. My name's on it. My phone number's on it. No problem.
Well, it could be a good regional event too. Our listeners listen on KJMT Mountain Talk 97.1. You guys feel free. You know, if you don't have to be in Marion County to come to this thing. All right. I mean, you could be in Baxter, Stone, and you know, make the trip up and see, you know, get to meet a potential candidate for governor. One of the things Jan Morgan did say last night at the Craighead County Republican, as she was received amazingly by most of the people there, she won a ton of people over at Craighead County. She said that they're making an announcement on January 1st. I mean, she said that to the crowd there, and so I think that's big. I think a lot of folks are going to breathe a sigh of relief on a new year and a potential new direction for the state, and actually having true conservative values represented instead of you know, somebody that acts like they're conservative and comes up with excuses as to why we can't, you know, sign a bill prohibiting Sharia law in the state of Arkansas. Rick, we're about out of time. I'll give you the last word, sir.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and I hope everybody from surrounding counties, like you said, I've got friends from Newton as far away as Newton County that say they're coming over. Some the other side of Green Forest or Green Forest area. Got some people from Boone County. I know some people from Baxter County that are coming. So come on out next week at 5 p.m. Join us at the community building at the fairgrounds, and let's put on a great event. Jan would love to talk to you.
All righty. Rick Bernard of Patriots of Act 746. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you for your commitment to the Second Amendment, and I'd love to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
All right, folks, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. 870-275-9799. You can call or text. We appreciate, we appreciate all your participation on Facebook Live. Maria writing, drain the swamp in Arkansas. Goodbye, Asa. Let's see here. Melissa on Facebook. Oh, no, this is good. Melissa. I love this. Melissa writes, we do the same thing plus The Hobbit, meaning she also watches Lord of the Rings in the month of December. That's fascinating that other people would do this. I mean, it got to the point with me where, you know, the last year's movie, so when you're gearing up to go watch The Two Towers, The Fellowship of the Ring had been released on DVD at the time. And so you could go and get that and then watch the movie, and the same thing happened the next year for Return of the King. Two Towers would come out. Now, the extended cuts would always take a month or two more. The extended cuts of these movies are amazing, and they give a lot more depth in it, and it's maybe one of the best trilogies of all time. But I'll say this. She mentions that they watched The Hobbit, too. I did that the last 2 years or so. We would watch The Hobbits, you know, the three-part Hobbit, Peter Jackson, and then you go in. And we didn't do that this year. We held back because the Hobbit movies, let's just be honest, they're not as good. I mean, there's some cool stuff, some Easter eggs, as they would call, you know what I mean? Some fan service. It's always great to see, you know, Ian McKellen is Gandalf because he plays that character so well. But we held off on that because we're like, you know what? First of all, it's like 12 hours of cinema, and then you're going to add even more to it. You know what I'm saying? But that's cool that there are other people listening that do the same thing. I don't know. It's something about it. I think it's just because when I grew up and well, tonight, Joe was just asking, you know, do we watch one at a time? I mean, we'll get through the first disc tonight for sure, but that's a lot. They're 2 discs per movie now. We'll get to the Council of Elrond. All right, moving on now. I have here in my show prep and my board that I wanted to talk just a little bit about the task force. That's right. The tax farce is meeting this week. Michael Wickline with a kind of a preview here. Arkansas lawmaker talks tax breaks. Some exemptions don't make sense. A co-chairman of the legislature's tax overhaul said Thursday that he's going to side with job creators and food and timber producers as the panel reviews the state's existing tax exemptions. When you dig down in there, you'll find out that there are exemptions that don't make any sense just because maybe a legislator at some point put down the line, was in that business, and that's just how it fell. That's according to State Representative Lane Jean, Republican from Magnolia. So here's the thing. The tax farce is due out with their preliminary recommendation at the end of this month. Now, they actually have moved that date. We were already supposed to have a recommendation by now or very soon, the beginning of this month. But now they're putting it towards the end of this month. And so I started asking, they're meeting tomorrow and Wednesday. I started thinking to myself, okay, what is the preliminary recommendation going to be? What is it going to be? The preliminary recommendation, what will it be? And my prediction is that if there is a all they've done is met a couple of times and talked to a couple of experts, a lifelong Democrat. They've had people, liberal groups talk about, progressive income tax. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, they haven't really done anything. I mean, they spent $300,000 on the consultant. So I kind of feel confident. I think the tax farce preliminary recommendations are going to be recommending things that we all already debated as a full legislative body in January. I think there's ample evidence to, think that's a very logical thing to because they've talked about the internet sales tax at these meetings. We got to have an internet sales tax. Well, the internet sales tax was just defeated. They talked about gasoline tax. They talked about double taxation on gasoline because there's not a sales tax on gasoline in Arkansas. There's just a gas tax. So they say, well, that's an exemption. The gas tax is exempt from sales tax. Well, you already have a gas tax on there. All this talk about adding exemptions or getting rid of exemptions, or I just feel like they're going to recommend things that we already debated in January, and we rejected the internet sales tax. They didn't have the votes for it. Somebody tell me I'm wrong here, but at least that's what I think. That's my preview on this. Representative Lane Jean goes on. We certainly don't need to hurt our farmers, our ranchers, our timber producers. We don't need to hurt our manufacturers because those are the jobs that we need in this state. That's just my personal point of view. I've told the committee that whatever we do, we need to do it deliberately, and we need to have a consensus that this is the route we go. State tax exemptions for agriculture interests are wide-ranging. They include an exemption for sales of feed used in commercial production of livestock and poultry that reduced tax revenue by some $99 million in 2011 under the latest estimates. The 16-member task force assigned the job of studying state taxes, recommending changes, was created under Acts 78 and 79 during the the year's regular session. The task force was formed partly to placate some lawmakers who favor more income tax cuts, particularly for Arkansans who have more than $75,000 a year in taxable income, where the top tax bracket starts. You know, the reason we have this task force, let's be honest, the reason we have a task force on tax reduction and the reason we don't have tax cuts the way we want to see them, meaningful tax cuts, is because ASA spent too much of our money. And ASA said no to tax reform. ASA said we got to put it in a tax force so we can control it, so we can manage it, so we don't just have Republicans on the record voting against conservative ideas. Can you imagine? See, I don't talk enough about the conservatives that are actually down there, but there are a lot of them. You don't hear about them because the mainstream media doesn't ever call them, or most of the time, they don't call them for comments. Now, some of them don't want to talk when they are called, if they are called, because they have a conservative voting record, but they don't want to rock the boat. But can you imagine if we had up or down votes on amendments and Republicans would actually be on record voting against tax cuts? They wanted to avoid that. And eventually, I mean, just like they wouldn't want an establishment Republican, that's one of their own, to have to vote against a tax cut, in case that Republican establishment caved and voted for a tax cut, they wanted to insulate Asa from having to come out against it, work against it, because he wants to spend the money somewhere else, or we've spent too much money. I mean, they brag about $150 million. He's overspent, he's increased spending almost $500 million. I mean, that would be real money that we could have for a tax cut. If you want to go by their logic that, a tax cut's not going to do anything to spur economic growth and give the government more revenue. I mean, to me, Asa Hutchinson and the family has rejected that whole process, rejected the idea that a tax cut actually will give the government, they don't even want to talk about it. It's all it's got to be revenue neutral, blah 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 blah, revenue neutral. They are worried that it's quite remarkable if you think about hiring a Democrat consultant, lifelong Democrat, donated to Democrats, paying him $300,000 to tell you the opposite of what almost every Republican has campaigned for. Pretty sad. Can I talk about something for a second? I know I harp on the fact that the governor has 2 nephews who are senators. Obviously, we made a parody about it, and it's very funny, and I have gotten so many phone calls on it from legislators. Some that you would be surprised that think it's the funniest thing they've ever heard. But all joking aside, I do believe there needs to be a serious conversation had about how it looks that Asa Hutchinson has 2 nephews who are senators, and one of them, nephew number 1, Jim Hendren, does all of the heavy lifting on behalf of his uncle, whether it's heading up these task forces or carrying the bills that he wants. And he is the majority leader and wants to be the president pro temp of the Senate. And Jim is desperately trying to make sure that that he retains leadership and becomes the president pro temp of the Senate in Arkansas. That's what Jim Hendren wants. That's all he's thinking about right now, is maintaining power and becoming the president pro temp of Arkansas. Now, the truth is, following Jim Hendren's lead has gotten some of these Republicans terrible scores on the Family Council scorecard, American Conservative Union, as well as Conduit for Commerce. And this is very upsetting to them, and it's causing a rift between Jim Hendren and, they may not tell him that to his face, but it's causing a rift between Jim Hendren and the people he needs to maintain power. It just is what it is. We can talk all about how we want to circle the wagons, but when you have a bunch of scorecards that are from different groups, completely unrelated to one another, and they're all kind of saying the same thing, that Ace's agenda and the nephew's agenda are not a conservative one, that got people really upset. And that's why Senator Hendren felt the need to try to score the scorecards, which is still hilarious. It's very, very funny. Because it was so futile. Anyway, I think there does need to be a serious conversation, all joking aside, about the optics of having your leader in the legislative branch that's supposed to be separate from the executive branch being a family member of the governor. Now, it's one thing to be a senator. It's fine, okay? People are electing you. You're running for office. And, some of this stuff, it appears, like you would say, well, that's nepotism. Well, it's not nepotism because, people are participating in the democratic process. And, Senator Jim Hendren's been elected, right? So, but when it comes to supporting him as the head of the deliberative legislative body, the Senate, I just think it is a fair point. And I think most people looking from the outside in, outside of the bubble of the Marble Palace, would think that it is a fair point that the integrity of the body is easily, in the decisions that you make as a Republican leader or president pro tempore of the Senate, are less valid when you figure out that he's the governor's nephew. And it's a fair point that I think maybe another direction is warranted because it just doesn't look good. Anybody would say that it doesn't look good. And it actually, from the Republican Party that's supposed to be the party of good government and transparency, it makes things seem suspect. It makes every motivation that is said can be called into question. And I want to be clear here. This is not something that I have thought of. I mean, obviously, I thought of the nephewed parody, right? And that was funny. You need to get nephewed because that's what conservatives have. We've been getting nephewed for a long time now. But I'm not the only one that brings it up. Almost every time that Jim Hendren or Jeremy Hutchinson is quoted in the newspaper, the Democrat Gazette or Talk Business will say ... the governor's nephew, or Jim Hendren, the governor's nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson, the governor's nephew. They make a point to tell you about it, and I think they do that because they feel obligated to it, because they think it's weird too. As a journalist, they just like, well, we need to present this because this is a key piece of information. I mean, can you imagine if they left it out and they never talked about it? They never talked about the governor having these two nephews who are in the Senate in key positions of power. Can you imagine if the media never talked about it and then one day they're like, did you know that they're nephews? Did you know that they're related? It would be a huge story if it was, you know, somehow discovered. So they point it out because they want, because it's like a film on their motivation. They're like it's dingy, you know. It makes things that are done seem more dingy than they would be, and they'd still be pretty dingy if you didn't have direct relations with the governor in positions of power. You know, in the Senate. Now, like I said, you can't do anything about actual Democratic elections, but I think as the party apparatus, as the caucus is what I'm trying to say, as the Republican caucus in the Senate, I think it is a fair point to say, you know what? It just looks like you're carrying the governor's water because you're related to them, and let's just not do that anymore. Anyway, we'll see. Again, I don't expect anything to change just because, you know, this is the same. They don't really care about appearances, okay? They're okay with Jake Files remaining in office, and they won't say anything public about it. So they're fine with appearances. But if there's anybody, you know, with any sanity, I think it's a fair point to bring up that let's make this legislative branch a little bit more legitimate by not looking like this is all like, you know, blood thicker than water type stuff. Blood's thicker than politics. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Merry Christmas from the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media.
Order. In the name of public safety, order. This meeting of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards is called to order in the name of public safety. What's on the agenda for the day?
We have before us today, per our summons, a representative from the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing cosmetology, cosmetologist, and all things hair care and beauty.
Right. Of course, I remember this. In the name of public safety, ma'am, please state your name for the record, and thank you for appearing before us today.
Yes, my name is Cosmo Glamour Gazette, and I'm here in response to a letter our state board received claiming we're in violation of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. In the letter, you claim that our licensing board is in violation of your rules and regulations because we have failed to, quote, pay tribute, end quote, and therefore have not been granted a license by the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing licensing boards to, quote, shake down the Arkansans who have an interest in cosmetology, end quote.
In the name of public safety, order. Yes, Miss Gazette, we sent you that letter because you have not obtained our approval in the form of a license from our board to distribute licenses to the professional class your board strives to protect. In the name of public safety, of course.
Of course.
So, in the name of public safety, and just so we can get this for the record, you do admit and agree with our board, the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards, that you have not obtained a license, thereby revealing your board of cosmetology to be operating outside our rules, regulations, and authority?
Well, sir, I'm not sure our board agrees that we need a license from your board to continue to shake down, to look out for the public safety of Arkansans.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Well, it seems we are at a bit of an impasse if we are not in agreement that your board owes us tribute.
Sir, maybe we could ask and see if there's a bureaucrat in the house.
Ah, yes. Yes, that would shed some light on things. A bureaucrat. Yeah, in the name of public safety, is there a bureaucrat in the house? We need someone to resuscitate and confirm our authority as the Arkansas State Licensing Board, governing state licensing boards.
Here.
Ah, yes. Oh, good. Come to the end of the table in the name of public safety and state your name for the record, please.
Yes, I am Despot Ringleader, the head of the Bureau governing all state bureaus, and it is my testimony the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards does have the authority to demand tribute in this situation and will provide in exchange a license to say they can continue to operate in the name of public safety.
It's hard to argue when the public safety is put at risk. Very well. We will consider Mrs. Ringleader's testimony as truth, and we will pay tribute in the name of public safety, of course.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
He puts the Paul in politics. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program, 870-275-9799. You can call or text, 870-275-9799. Let's see here. Trying to see here. All right, sorry about that. Just want to let you guys know, let's see, tomorrow on the program, gosh, I'm working on a story right now. Let's just say, and there's a story right now, Joe, I haven't even told you about this, that is going to be very interesting. If true, it's going to paint the Republican Party of Arkansas in a bad light, one that's not transparent, and, well, I'll just leave it at that. So I don't know if that's tomorrow necessarily, but I think sometime this week. We also have tomorrow on the program, we are going to be going over, again, another segment brought to you by Conduit for Commerce. So that's coming up, so stay tuned for that. Oh, check this out. On Friday, we'll be talking with the new CEO from the Seven Hills Homeless Shelter. Jessica Andrews will be on the program. You know, we talked to her predecessor when he was on his way out, and that was good. And the financial security there, you know, how they turned the Seven Hills Homeless Center around. So that's going to be good. Also, we'll have a small business spotlight on Friday with Mr. Lance Johnson. So anyway, and we got some. Anyway, we got a good thing going here. Here's the other thing. Tomorrow on the program, we're probably going to lead with this. Do you realize that medicine errors are high in Arkansas nursing homes? And we rank like third in the country for, like, whoops, didn't give you your medicine or gave you the wrong medicine, and you know what I'm saying? Like third in the country. And I want to talk about that in the context of the tort reform amendment to the Constitution of Arkansas that we're going to be voting on next November, and which I'm not a fan of this particular version of tort reform because it went way too far, and you kind of maybe look why the nursing homes are backing it if you look at information about how third highest in the country. All right, folks, we'll see you tomorrow. I've had a great Monday. Lord of the Rings, here I come. Arkansas, be safe.